welcome back to Crypto Saving Experts, where we talk about the latest cryptocurrency news and take a look at the markets so that we all know exactly what is happening. My name is Jess and we do these live streams every single weekday, so please make sure to like, subscribe and hit that bell notification button. We've got quite a lot to be discussing today. You're going to hear another rant from me about the SEC and the regulation in the US, but first of all, let's take a look at what's going on here. So Bitcoin is down 1.75% in the last 24 hours. Ethereum is down 2.77% in the same period. Over the last week, though, they are up pretty nicely, around 10% each. In terms of altcoins here, we all have seen movements to the downside within the last 24 hours, very much across the board there. SHIB is holding strong, up 1.7%, but the rest is red. The rest are red here. Bitcoin Cash up 0.35%, managing to hold on to that gain. Bitcoin Cash is approaching its halving event. Just like Bitcoin has a halving, so does Bitcoin Cash, because it is a fork off Bitcoin, so that's what we're seeing here. And that's been up 34% within the last week. So very nice to see those changes there. And we're still seeing developments in the crypto space. We are getting closer and closer to the Bitcoin halving, which is in 23 days. And when we get closer to that, we can get more excited because the inflation rate for Bitcoin is being halved. What's more bullish than that? In the long term, this is historically a really bullish event. In the short term, not so much. So we are preparing for that. But so far, the markets are looking pretty good. In terms of fear and greed, we are seeing this up at 83 right now, so we are in extreme greed. If we take a look at the liquidation heat map, we can see we have a strong magnet above us right now at $71,000. So let's take a look at what's going on in the Bitcoin price here and see what's in store, because we've had a significant pullback and we've had a double bottom here where we've seen two extreme lows in the market, and we have now hit this point here. Now we are not reaching those all-time high levels just yet, but we are above that previous all-time high of $69,000. So we are seeing us holding these levels, which is really important, and we are also seeing us use a previous level of resistance as a level of support on the 4-hour chart. Now this makes me feel a lot more confident than I have been. We've been talking a lot about a pre-halving dip on this channel and in the last couple of months, and we've now seen this dip in the markets, and I'm looking at this like there could be two scenarios playing out here. First of all, we have already seen a Bitcoin all-time high prior to that Bitcoin halving, and we've not seen that in any other cycle. So there are discussions flying about around the idea of this cycle being shorter than we've seen previously, and everything shifting slightly to the left. So we've seen an all-time high earlier than expected, and it could be that this is the pre-halving dump earlier than expected, because Bitcoin halvings are seen to be short-term bearish. So to see a dump 35 days prior to the Bitcoin halving, 39 days prior to the Bitcoin halving, it could just be that we've seen that dump early because people wanted to take profits before that historically bearish event arises. So it's definitely a scenario that could be playing out here. We could be now moving on to higher prices. Another scenario that I think is credible right now is that we continue to the upside here. We make new all-time highs, and then when we reach this sort of period, so between the 9th and the 17th, 18th, 20th of April, that's when we see the real pre-halving dip. And this was a pre-halving dip. This one seems a little bit early to me, so it could be either that we have just continued to push everything to the left and it's happened earlier than expected, or it could be that this isn't the pre-halving dip and there's another one to come, and that's something I'm really considering here. Obviously, there is the option that we could just consolidate in this dump for a long period of time up to that Bitcoin halving. That is definitely possible. I think it really depends on the inflows that come into these Bitcoin ETFs. We've seen a lot of price movement to the upside off the back of these ETFs. In the last 5 days before yesterday, we were seeing net outflows. But yesterday we came back in, on Monday we came back in with net inflows for those ETFs. So it was showing that the bullishness was still there. We were still seeing huge amounts of money flowing into these ETFs during that dip. And that showed that these institutional investors are strong. They've not got paper hands. They're not selling when the markets are down. They seem to be very educated investors, which we've seen historically with other assets, but we were seeing how this plays out in this case, and we have seen analysts say, look, the way that these investors are trading shows that they are mature traders. They're not just going to paper hand this as soon as it drops. They've been buying up the asset. The only reason we saw net outflows for the ETFs was because of the GBTC outflows. managing to exceed the inflows. But now we are seeing net inflows once again. Hopefully we can hold that and we can move up to higher prices. But if we're staying near this kind of neutral zone for a couple more weeks, then maybe, yes, sideways action is in play. But I think that's my least likely scenario. Let's take a look at what's going on in the chat this morning. Good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. As always, PG Bina, J-Man, J Mizzle. Let's take a look at what this is. So J-Man says, Jess, do you think I'm going to sell at the right time and get out with my money, or go over the top, or even worse, so early? I thought this was supposed to be the fun part. It's more stressful than ever. Do you know what? There's a high probability that the majority of people do not take profits in this market. I would like to say that in a bull market, it is incredibly easy and relatively easy to make money. It is incredibly hard to keep hold of that money. You will hear so many stories in crypto of people that made a huge portfolio, made a huge amount of money, and then they lost it because they were over leveraged, or they just didn't take profits and they wrote it down to zero. I could tell you one story from myself, which I told yesterday as well. Everybody in crypto has their story where we've all thought that we were brilliant traders and investors and then managed to lose it all. It's easy to make money in this space. It's hard to keep hold of it. So taking profits is super important. I would say taking profits early is not even worse. That is one of the best scenarios. Nobody is going to time the top. Especially if we were lucky enough to time the bottom, it's very unlikely you're going to be able to time the top as well. When we're looking at these markets, taking profits early is the best scenario. You don't want to be taking profits when the markets are going down. That's a panic sell. You want to be taking profits in the green. Buy red, sell green. That is what I always say. And this is why I've said that my plan is to dollar cost average out. I'm going to pick a 6-month period. Still finalizing on that. Originally, I was saying 3 months, kind of June, July, August next year. But as things are playing out and things do seem to have shifted to the left and there is the possibility of the shorter cycle, I want to spread that out a little bit more and take profits over a long period of time, maybe earlier than that initial date as well, depending on how we play out over this Bitcoin halving here. But dollar cost averaging out is the best play, because that means you can feel confident that that you're taking profits at the right time. You're still hoping for the markets to go up. You still have some exposure to that, but you're saying, look, it's time to take some profits here. We've had a really good ride. A lot of people fall into the trap of thinking that a 2x trade isn't good enough in the crypto space, because we always hear about the 100x, the 1000x to coins. But we do have to remember that we want to be taking profits at all times, and it's so important. Don't go through all of this effort and research and time to have nothing to show for it. So make sure to take profits. I always like to take profits on the way up rather than on the way down, just like I like to invest when things are red, not when things are green. And I am planning to dollar cost average out eventually as well. Let's take a look at what else is going on here. Jay Maisel said we had our dump, it going to go up from here. Watch the ETF steady and constant. Buying all dips from here, folks. Too early to take profit on Bitcoin now. Yeah, Jay Mizzle. What's J-Man says, it's just I'm up more than I imagined already, and the left translated cycles making me nervous. My smallest bag fetch is now rivaling Bitcoin in my second place position. I am up 15x. Congratulations, J-Man. That's really impressive. When it comes to taking profits, I mean, if you're happy with your profits, take profits. And as I've just said, you do not need to take profits all at once. You do not need to be 100% in crypto or not at all. I always like to take profits at the start of a cycle into Bitcoin, because I am a big Bitcoin bull for the long term. So when I'm trading altcoins, I like to rotate these profits back into Bitcoin and try and stack Bitcoin as much as possible. But there will be a point where I will be starting to sell some Bitcoin, and I know this is against many people's thesis, like kind of mindsets in crypto. I would like to sell some Bitcoin this cycle. Put my hands up and say it. I would like some cash to spoil myself. So I do plan to take some profits from Bitcoin eventually, but I am choosing personally to rotate profits into Bitcoin at any chance I get at this point in time. As I said in yesterday's stream, my portfolio is relatively small compared to other YouTubers. So I am in the same boat where I'm trying to manage a portfolio, not over diversify, but also make sure that I'm taking some money off the table. Let's see what's going on here. Jay Maisel says generally 100%, however, right now is not the time. Yeah, personally, right, obviously nothing is financial advice, but personally right now I have not chosen to sell any Bitcoin up to this point in time. I don't go off the prices, I go off the time frames. And that has worked out perfectly until Bitcoin screwed it all up and had an all-time high pre-halving. That's kind of messed up my time frames, but I'm still going off that basis. Because we've seen how cycles work before. People have extremely high price targets and we never fully hit them, and people have extremely bearish price targets. And I think the timings of these cycles have been the most predictable so far. Yes, it may have changed this cycle, and yes, it may be sooner, but I would much rather go into this bull market and say, look, on this date, I'm going to take out 10%, 10%, 10%, 10% every first of the month, or every 2 weeks for the next 6 weeks, or something like this. Something to work out so that I am taking profits and I don't get caught up in this up-only mentality, because in a bull market, it's so easy to say, do you know what? It's going to go higher. Do you know what? Bitcoin's at $1 million next week. It is so easy to do that when the markets are going up and up and up. So making sure that I say to myself, okay, on this date, in 6 months' time, in 8 months' time, in 10 months' time, I am taking profit, means that whatever mentality I'm in at that time, if I've got caught up in the bull market and believe that Bitcoin's going to the moon forever, I will stick to that plan and continue to take profits. Obviously, leave some money in Bitcoin, because we're here this early. I don't want to miss out on that, but I want to be able to I want to make sure I'm taking profits along the way. J-Man says, I feel so lost because of that. I pretty much was using the 4-year cycle as my jumping off point, and we've seemed to screwed it up, and I'm new first cycle. I don't know what to do about this. Yeah, it's not the easiest times to be following the 4-year cycles, because that all-time high has changed things. And we've been saying this on the channel for a long time. We've been following these cycles very, very closely. When Bitcoin was at $16,000, I was saying, look, by April 2024, Bitcoin will be at 50K. Everyone thought that was the most unreasonable bullish price prediction they could ever see. And then we hit 50K, and I thought, this is too early. This is too early. And we've exceeded that. We've exceeded the all-time high, and we've broken that pattern. But 50K would have been around average and would have been the perfect sweet spot for Bitcoin to be holding right now. But it went and exceeded it. It went up $20,000 higher. It's done absolutely insane. So with that, we need to look at the markets now and just be a little bit more aware of the changes that could be happening here. I think the halving will be a real telltale sign for us of what's happening, if we're going to get that short 20% dump just before the halving, or if we're seeing that much earlier as well, and this dump they're experiencing now is the pre-halving dump. That will give us an indication of what's happening here, if everything has shifted to the left, how condensed it could be. But I'm definitely going off time frames, and we'll be making some new projections after this Bitcoin ETF, Bitcoin halving has happened. And I think that's the best strategy to go by this. And it's always important to make a plan and stick to it, but we have to take into consideration new data and new information. Having a new all-time high and having price activity change over the halving, that will be two events that show that we need to adjust our plans and make some amendments. Jonathan says, are we sad Bitcoin hit all-time high? Learn to chart and put it into practice daily, and we'll be ready. No, I mean, I'd feel a lot more comfortable if Bitcoin had stayed at $50,000 until post-halving. It also would have given it more time to consolidate. But here we are. I'm still happy. I'm still happy with the price. I mean, I had no fiat left to invest, so Bitcoin, go to the moon, but also do it in a slow and structured manner that means you've built some supports along the way. Let's take a look at what's going on in the cryptocurrency news, though, because we've just had a little bit of a waffle about the Bitcoin price there. Let's take a look at what's going on in the news. So first of all, we have here, how much has Bitcoin outperformed other assets? Bitcoin has outperformed every other asset on earth over the last 14 years. So you can see here on this chart, compared to the US NASDAQ, the US growth, large caps, mid caps, value, small caps, conservative bonds, high yield bonds, preferred stocks, investment grade bonds, gold, and anything here you can see, commodities. Bitcoin has outperformed it So that's a really nice piece of information to share. Bitcoin has performed the best in 11 of the 14 years as well. So not only just as a whole over that time period, but individually over the years as well. So Bitcoin is outperforming gold by over 45% thus far, and still doing in 2024 and still doing incredibly well. So we'll see how this continues to play out. It's been going well so far. Let's take a look at what else is happening here, because I want to talk about this. Essentially, earlier this week, we saw the SEC do some investigations on how it classifies Ethereum. We have a article on this first, actually, and then we'll move on to the next one. So I want to explain this quickly again. We did do a huge deep dive into this on Thursday last week. I think it was Thursday last week. If you do not know about the US regulation of cryptocurrency, who the SEC are, and how we classify these assets and what impact this has on the cryptocurrencies, make sure to watch Thursday's live stream last week, because we went into a lot of detail. But essentially, what we'll just do a quick recap here. The SEC is the Securities Exchange Commission, and that is a regulatory body in the US. Now, they regulate securities. The CFTC is the commodities regulator in the US. They regulate commodities. What is a security and what is a commodity? Well, they do two different types of assets. To determine whether an asset is a security or a commodity, we use a specific set of guidelines called the Howey test. This is a 4-phase test, and if an asset fulfills all 4 requirements in the Howey test, it makes it a security. If it does not, even if it just doesn't fulfill one, it makes it a commodity. So that determines which regulator should be regulating those assets. Now, previously, the CFTC have said that Ethereum is a commodity and it should be regulated by them. And again, they have named Ethereum as a commodity when it comes to their filings against KuCoin. But the US SEC have said recently that they'd like to say it was a security. Now, there's a big problem here, because when we're looking at the guidelines to determine whether an asset is a security or not, we should not be able to come up with a different conclusion than our neighbor. We should be able to both read these guidelines and clearly understand which category an asset fits into. That's the whole point of the test. Now, the problem isn't the test itself. It's the problem that the test is outdated. So the Howey test was created in 1946, and it's not been updated since digital assets were created. And we all already know this test does not fit for digital assets. It's not clear for digital assets. So there's been petitions from companies like Coinbase and the CEO and many other projects trying to get some clearer guidelines from the SEC for this, for the classification of digital assets. We have not been able to get it. Gary Gensler and the SEC have been adamant that the regulation is there and the guidelines are clear enough, even though they've lost lawsuits from incorrectly classifying or classifying assets different to how the courts classify assets. So if the SEC are classifying assets different to the court's judge, that shows that their guidelines aren't correct, but they're still saying that the guidelines are there and they're in place. So we've been on this battle for quite a long time. And we're now facing a point where the US lawmakers are demanding the SEC clarity on Ethereum assets classification. So the lawmakers said that the lack of clarity has exacerbated the uncertainty within the digital asset ecosystem and made it harder for companies to comply with regulation. So essentially, what happens if Ethereum is a security? Well, it would mean that Ethereum could not be listed on the majority of current centralized exchanges, because these centralized exchanges are not registered securities exchanges. They are, if Ethereum is classified as a security, they will be accused of being unregistered securities exchanges, and they could face an entire lawsuit. So we've already seen the SEC last year go against multiple different cryptocurrency exchanges and list a number of altcoins as securities, and basically say to the exchanges, you are an unregistered securities exchange. Now, this was a huge problem. We saw many of these tokens actually getting delisted from those centralized exchanges. One interesting thing to note is that Ethereum was not in these filings. And the second interesting thing to note is that this kind of whole problem is the same problem that XRP has been facing for years. The SEC have been saying XRP is a security, and that's what that whole lawsuit has been over for the last couple of years. So they're still in debates here over how to classify this asset. But on March 26th, the letter specifically demands clarity on the status of Ethereum and further requests the regulators to establish clear definitions for various terms related to crypto, digital assets, securities, and investment contracts. The letter was signed by 48 members of Congress, and according to the letter, the SEC has failed to propose a rule of provide comprehensive guidance for asset classification, and the term digital asset securities remains undefined. I completely agree. Lawmakers said that despite a public record that from both the SEC and CFTC identifying Ethereum as a non-security digital asset, there is concern over the lack of transparency in the SEC's SPBD regime and the potential regulatory implications of allowing such custody services. The letter poses the question, is ETH a digital security? The query is followed by several other questions depending on the answer. So they emphasized in the alarming scenario posed by the announcement, arguing that it could lead to irreparable consequences for the digital asset market if allowed to proceed under the current regulatory framework, which does not explicitly permit the SPBD custody of non-security digital assets. So, highlighting the discrepancies between the SEC's enforcement actions and the historical recognition of ETH as a non-security digital asset, the letter criticised the SEC for not providing comprehensive guides or rules for the digital asset marketplace. So, we've seen them say that Ethereum is a non-security, and we've all seen the videos by now of Gary Gensler, the chairman of the SEC, doing a lecture and saying about Ethereum and how it wasn't a security. We're now he's saying it could be a security. Investigations going on with the Ethereum Foundation. Lots of problems here would arise if Ethereum is basically labeled as a security by the SEC. First of all, there was we heard that news last week, and Ethereum just kind of went on its way. It had a little bit of a dip, but then it went on its way, and that's exactly how I expected it to happen, because we've already seen the SEC list a number of tokens as securities in previous filings, and the tokens, yes, they had an initial small dip, and then they just went on their way like it never happened. And that's exactly what happened for Ethereum, so I'm very happy to see that price action continue to be the way forwards. It's like crypto investors don't care at this point. So what we're saying here is we do want some clear guidelines in the US. It would make it so much easier for cryptocurrency-based projects. Let's take a look at what's going on here. So there are filings against KuCoin now, and the CFTC is labeling Ethereum as a commodity. We cannot have the CFTC labeling Ethereum as a commodity and the SEC labeling it as a security for a long period of time. These regulators can't both regulate the same asset. There needs to be clearer guidelines, and this may be the turning point for the digital space where we do get some classifications there, and hopefully it's what we want, because that would open a whole new kind of worms. But let's take a look at what else is going on in the cryptocurrency news here. Let's move on. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button so you don't miss the latest cryptocurrency news. Let's take a look at what's going on here in the live chat. Jonathan says left translated cycle thesis is not the only scenario that could play out. No, 100% it's not. The problem with leverage is people can see where there is leverage and will deliberately try to liquidate if their leverage is high. 100%. We look at the liquidation heat maps every single day. There is definitely a magnet up here at $71,000, because if we move up to that price point, a lot of short traders will get liquidated, and we all know Bitcoin likes to take the path of most pain, so we do need to be aware of that. Let's take a look at what's going on here. Bitcoin rocket, says Randy. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button so you don't miss the latest cryptocurrency news. We do these live streams every single weekday, and I would appreciate it if you tune in with us every single weekday. Let's take a look at what's going on here. So Decrypt's newsletter email has been hacked, and they have sent phishing links to users. So make sure if you are on their email list, do not click any links. Just be incredibly careful with emails from Decrypt for now, but it seems like they've taken back control here. So fingers crossed everything is okay. Zach XBT revealed that roughly $3,000 in crypto has been phished by scam emails. He provided the Ethereum address used by the hacker. So that's what's happened there. But fingers crossed, nobody lost too much money. And we all need to just make sure to practice best practices. It's so hard to kind of make sure people are staying safe when there's illegitimate emails coming out of a legitimate source. So you just need to be incredibly careful, fact check everything, make sure everything's as it seems. A lot of these big crypto companies like ourselves, like Decrypt, will not be asking for money or sending out airdrops. So the false email said there was a Decrypt airdrop. There is not, and they're looking to regain access. So just be incredibly careful. Don't click on any links. Just a little bit of a warning there. Let's carry on and see what else is going on here. So a Bitcoin whale has chosen to move $6 billion worth of Bitcoin after not moving any for a very long period of time. So the large chunks of Bitcoin were split between 3 new addresses. This is the 5th richest Bitcoin address known to us right now, and the address is known as 37X and has been dormant for 5 years. So you can see they've split up their balance into 3 different wallets. So they moved its entire balance of 94.5k Bitcoin into the early hours of Saturday, 23rd of March, leaving only 1.4 Bitcoin in the address. Only 1.4. Let's see what goes on here. So the total stack of once dormant Bitcoin stood at $94,500, and it is in a 600% gain. So the 94,500 Bitcoin was deposited into the address on the 6th of September 2019 and was worth roughly $998 million. 5 years on, the Bitcoin has increased by a factor of 6, with the whale gaining $5 billion on their Bitcoin. The Bitcoin address is here, deposited the Bitcoin into it, which data from Arkham shows it began accumulating Bitcoin in August 2016. Between August and November, the address accumulated 124,000 Bitcoin. So a huge amount of Bitcoin there, and it is now not dormant, but it just seems to be spread out a bit. Maybe it's some millionaire somewhere that just had 3 children and wanted to share that all out. Or maybe they just wanted to diversify their risk a little bit more. I think it's always important not to put all of your funds in one wallet. But let's take a look at what else is going on in the cryptocurrency news here. So ETF update, a halt to the slide. Bitcoin ETFs post green day. So 5 consecutive days of net outflows have been stopped, as we did see a net inflow day on Monday. So that was brilliant to see. And off the back of that, we saw some pretty nice price action yesterday. Also in the news, the Department of Justice has charged KuCoin and 2 founders with breaking anti-money laundering laws. So the US Department of Justice accuses KuCoin and its 2 founders of operating an unlicensed money transmitting business and violating the Bank Secrecy Act. And in those filings, we have already seen in the news today, the CFTC has labeled Ethereum and Litecoin as commodities in the KuCoin filings there. And I think that's a key point to be aware of in these filings as well. Let's take a look at what else is going on here. 70% of Solana users opt for USDC over USDT. So the data demonstrates the difference in stablecoin preference. We're seeing a huge amount of users choosing USDC instead, which is pretty interesting. I used to be a USDC fan, but over time, I've gone back to USDT. I think it was in the bear market, really. In the last cycle, I was using USDC, and this cycle, USDT is the one for me. I think the longevity, I don't see anything wrong with USDC. I think it's just personal preference. I would also always say, look, maybe move into the 2. Maybe it was off the back of the Silicon Valley collapse where USDC depegged for that short period of time. It showed no vulnerabilities in the project to me. But it's a transition that I made that I've not really come back from. I don't see a problem. I think my most preferred thing would be to kind of split 50-50 between the 2. I very rarely hold stable coins, to be honest, unless I'm trading. I kind of stay away. I'm buying Bitcoin and I want to buy Bitcoin. I want more Bitcoin. So yeah, interesting statistic there though. Let's take a look at what's going on with Bitcoin on the shorter time frames before we close off today's stream. I've got 3 minutes left before I've got a meeting with the CSE team. So make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification button. If you are a CSC Plus community member, then I do believe we have a Discord stream tonight at 5 p.m. And that is with that Martini guy, where we can ask any questions we want about the cryptocurrency space, about the markets, and he tells us some insights on what he thinks is happening in the markets right now. So if you want to be in that, make sure to sign up to cryptosavingexpert.com. All you need to do is go to CSE and go to join CSE Plus. If you go to the bottom, you can become a Community Plus member to get access to this Discord stream. You come in here, you join the Discord, and the stream is in there, and the conversation is in there. You can turn your microphone on and your camera on and have a conversation with him, or you can send in your questions in advance and they all get answered there. So we do those once every 2 weeks with the community Discord group, and we do it every week with the community premium group. So if you're in the premium, you technically get 3 every 2 weeks. So that's what's going on there. Make sure to check that out, and make sure to join if you are a CSE community member today at 5 p.m. UK time. We are also seeing here on the 1 hour chart, we are consolidating a little bit here, which is nice. And I do believe this is a previous level of resistance here at around $69,500. If we can continue to hold this, then that would be really good. And it would continue on with the idea that maybe everything has shifted to the left. But I think this window period of time here between the 9th of April and the halving will also be a real big telltale sign, because it could be, as I said at the start of today's stream, this is not the pre-halving dump. This is just a dump, and then we continue upwards, and then we get the pre-halving dump. Or it could be that this is the pre-halving dump, and we have really seen a big shift to the left. When we know that, and when we know more towards the end of April, we'll be able to better analyze what's going on here and what changes we could expect to see this cycle. So make sure to stay tuned. We do these live streams every single weekday. Please make sure to hit like, subscribe, press that bell notification button. That's all from me today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all back here tomorrow. Goodbye.